Just a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the visit of the Vice President JD Vance to Greenland. Now, it turns out that visit has had some very negative consequences, at least for one person. It was a visit, if you recall, the people of Greenland didn't want, that the government of Denmark, whose territory Greenland currently is, didn't want, and that forced Vance to end up visiting the military base in Greenland and making a speech on the base where he slated Denmark for being a bad ally, because that's the language the administration routinely uses these days. The base, Pitufik Space Base, was under the command of Colonel Susanna Meyers, seen here giving JD Vance and his wife a tour of the base. After Vance's visit, the anti-Denmark rhetoric and the way the local sensibilities had been rather trampled on was obviously seen as something of an issue. And you'd expect that. These people have been sited in this location for years. They've done their best, no doubt, to get on with the locals and to be part of the community. Indeed, all of the things that America would normally expect of its forces, hosted on the territory of valued allies. Remember those days? Well, anyway, days after JD Vance's visit, Meyers sent an email to all personnel on the base saying this: "I spent the weekend thinking about Friday's visit, the actions taken, the words spoken, and how it must have affected each of you. I do not presume to understand current politics, but what I do know is the concerns of the administration discussed by Vice President Vance on Friday are not reflective of Pitufik Space Base." And she concluded, "I commit that for as long as I am lucky enough to lead this base, all of our flags will fly proudly together." I'm guessing from that they've been told by Vance that maybe they should remove the Denmark flag, maybe also the Greenland flag, just have the American one. Anyway, whether that's the case or not, her luck promptly ran out. The communication, which military.com website said was seemingly aimed at generating unity amongst the airmen and the Guardians, as well as the Canadians, Danes and Greenlanders who work there, was not received gladly as news of it went up the chain of command. The chief Pentagon spokesman, Sean Parnell, announced on Twitter, "Actions to undermine the chain of command or to subvert President Trump's agenda will not be tolerated at the Department of Defense." And he posted the official press statement saying that Colonel Meyers had been removed from command for, quote, "loss of confidence in her ability to lead." Commanders are expected to adhere to the highest standards of conduct, especially as it relates to remaining non-partisan in the performance of their duties. Now, on the one hand, you could take this partly as an indicator of the confusion and disorientation, maybe even the dismay in various places caused by the administration's recently announced policies that are sharp reversals of what they were before. I mean, allies like Denmark have been left reeling and deeply alarmed by America's sudden change of posture towards them, so you might expect the military personnel who have been side by side with them so far are going to be equally appalled by being the forward agents of such might be seen as a serious betrayal. That said, it's not really surprising that she was removed. I mean, the military does have a strict chain of command for a reason. The idea of sending around an email that could be seen as critical of the representative of the commander-in-chief, not ever going to be a smart thing to do. The point is that if you find military policy is something not to your taste, traditionally you have only two choices, especially if you're in a leadership position. One, knuckle down, get on with it, keep your opinions entirely to yourself. Or two, maybe raise your concerns with your commanding officer, and if there is no resolution from that you can live with, then resign. I would suggest that a command to remove flags would probably not be the hill on which to die, but it's obviously a personal choice. Frankly, most commanders who felt that way would probably have just quietly left the flags in place and not made a big deal out of it. Maybe made some general speeches to the locals on the base about how valued they are without cross-reference to the Vice President's visit at all or connecting the two in any way. But sending an email talking about how people might have been feeling, it's kind of the sort of thing you might expect in the New York Times newsroom. It's not appropriate for the military. And of course, it just plays as well into the MAGA narrative on all of this, where a lot of them now see any woman in a position of authority and immediately label it as a DEI hire. No surprise that plenty have been doing exactly that in this case. Now, of course, this isn't a combat base, it's a space base, mostly there to monitor for incoming missiles from Russia, other related duties. Nobody assumed that this commander was going to be leading forces into battle or anything like that. But yeah, so what? I mean, she should have resigned or kept quiet. If Trump ever did follow through with his crazy talk about not ruling out using military force to take control of Greenland, well, then at that point you would find which of the military are prepared to go all the way and which at that point would be saying, I didn't sign up for this, I'm out. If the US were to end up in an actual fighting civil war, I rather suspect that's how the military units of each side would be sorted. In the meantime, it's worth noting that this action does come against a backdrop of growing concern about the Trump administration removing numerous US officials from all sorts of government posts, including the military, because of criticism, not necessarily public, of Trump and his administration, but also for reasons unspecified. So last week, Trump fired Air Force General Tim Hoff, the director of the National Security Agency. No reason given. But the dismissal came at the urging of conspiracy theorist Laura Loomer, because that's how the US rolls these days. Congressmen from both sides of the aisle condemned the sacking. For instance, Republican Don Bacon, who said Hoff is an outstanding leader and was doing a superb job. He was fired with no public explanation. I mean, it isn't a valid excuse, but if you want to understand why some military leaders might feel that maybe their chain of command carries less legitimacy than it used to, you could look at that sort of clown show, and if you were them, maybe you'd think that if you could just keep it together for a while, sanity will return and you would have minimized damage in the meantime. And that doesn't have to actually be a disloyal objective to have, but you have to constrain what you're going to do to achieve it, and sending emails around probably not going to do the job. Anyway, back to the firings. Vice Admiral Shoshana Chatfield, who served with NATO, she was fired this week with no confirmation as to why. She is a combat veteran and a helicopter pilot, but apparently comments she'd made in support of the previous administration's diversity policies had led her to being labelled as woke, and hence a target for removal. Ironically, of course, in supporting those policies at the time, she was doing exactly what JD Vance expected of the base commander in Greenland. But let's not expect consistency in any of this. And various other high-profile military leaders have also been fired since Trump took office, again without any reason given, such as Joint Chiefs Chairman General Charles Brown, the Navy's top leader Admiral Lisa Franchetti, and Air Force Vice Chief of Staff General James Slife. The point is for all of those that the administration's mantra that it opposed DEI because it believed only in promotion on merit seems to be absent from the decisions it's actually been making on personnel in the practice. Instead, it's been removing people who are seen as having different views, who are not aligned with the Trump agenda, even if they haven't said or done a single thing that suggested they were acting out of turn. Fought crime, you might say. And Trump's decision to put people like Pete Hegseth in as Secretary for State for Defense, who then goes and immediately commits the most rookie of errors, putting attack plans into a text on a third-party app, is that it does, to some degree, have a major impact down the chain. Officers who see themselves held to high standards, while the people at the top stoop to the lowest of the lowest standards. The professional thing is for them to keep going regardless. But they wouldn't be human if it didn't have an effect that would be at least opposite to the one you would want to produce in a professional and disciplined fighting force. Set your examples from the top. We'll see, but I'm betting this minor instance of tension playing out won't be the last we see in the United States military over the coming years, especially if the Trump administration keeps going towards authoritarian actions internally and hostility to allies externally.